Hi guys, back here with another video. Today we're doing a book review of this book I have right here, Syria, Civil War to Holy War by Charles Glass. Um, yeah, so I got interested in this basically leading up to and eventually after Assad's regime fell. I got interested in this topic because it was so unexpected and it happened so quickly. So I'll just get right into the review of the book. Before you even finish as much of a chapter of this book, you already get the impression, which is sustained throughout the work, that Mr. Glass has no patience, nor does he pull any punches for the perpetrators in the game of power that was the Syrian civil war. He has plenty of criticism for all sides, and that's what makes the book kind of interesting is that there are so many sides and they are none of their interests align completely. So they're kind of like it's uh you know every man for himself, and there's like 10, 15 different groups. Not every man for himself, but like every group for himself, I suppose. Um, Yeah, so Glass's analysis, while perhaps not explicitly subscribing to the theory or endorsing its permissibility in moral terms, must be viewed from a realpolitik or a realist or a neo-realist perspective on foreign relations and wars between states, a la my old professor Robert Art, who has since retired, or, more famously on YouTube and the internet, John Mearsheimer. These kind of figures in foreign relations and international relations subscribe to this idea that, we must view developments in a realist terms. Just to summarize realism, neorealism, the idea is that the world system is anarchic, and that states, individual sovereign states, try to impose uh, order on a chaotic, anarchic system, and they try to impose to the best of their ability um, their interests, economics, geostrategic, and trade wise on the system. So usually this is just regional. So, because, most countries can't become global powers, global superpowers like the United States or the Soviet Union was once upon a time. But, countries like Iran, Turkey, uh, Japan, these countries, they want to, their sphere of influence is their region, or Korea, South Korea, North Korea as well, actually. Their sphere of influence is in their region, and they try to act accordingly. Saudi Arabia is another one. Um, they try to do things to their advantage, to their best estimation of what's good for their people and their country. Once you make this connection to uh, interpret the book through realist lens, it is easy to see why Mr. Glass has no patience for defenders of any side of this conflict, be it the US and European powers, Turkey on one side, or Russia, Iran, etc., nor the fighters actually doing the fighting on the ground, the factions on the ground, the Assadists, the Kurds, the Arabs, the Sunni Arabs, the Druze, whatever. So many sides to the conflict, which is what makes it so unique and interesting, is that so many different groups of people live in Syria, and they all have their own different interests that, at many times conflict with one another. So, Jabhat al-Nusra, or, whatever, Harir al-Sham, uh, rebranded themselves into the group. So, what is distinct about this book, if not outright unique to this volume, is that Glass's extensive network within Syria, who are often asked about what their thoughts are on the developments as they happened. Some are named and some are unnamed, depending on circumstances, which is the mark of a good journalist, I think, upholding journalistic ethics and values. Um, you can't find in this book an argument for the righteousness of any side of this conflict, any of the many sides of the conflict. And he sees almost all the developments as sort of a big world powers game of power. It's just like, you know, what we think suits us best, what we can do to advance our interests and make shape developments according to what we think is best for us. While I will not quote extensively in this review, there are a few points I want to touch on. The first being page 45 and 46, where Glass writes, Syria's war is anything its fighters want it to be. It is a class war of the suburban proletariat against a state army financed by the bourgeoisie. It is a sectarian war in which the Sunni Arab majority is fighting to displace an Alawi ruling class. It is a holy war of Sunni Muslims against all manifestations of Shiism, especially the Alawite variety. The social understandings on which Aleppo prided itself are unraveling. Muslim fundamentalists have targeted Christian churches and Shiite mosques. Arabs have fought Kurds. Iraqi Shiites and Sunnis have crossed the border to fight each other in Syria. So I think, this passage really highlights a key point is that the war in Syria was so layered and multifaceted and indeed quagmiric, if one allows for a word to be coined to fit the description as laid out in this quote. There are so many sides to it, and it runs so deep. Like it might have developed quickly and it might have ended very abruptly, unexpectedly, but there were so many sides. The Kurds in Rojava, they're still, you know, trying to uphold their system within the new government. So Jolani is the leader of Syria now, but Rojava is still there. What's going to happen there? Are they going to just allow them to do their own thing, or is there going to be some sort of attempt to reabsorb them into uh, Greater Syria or whatever you want to call it? Um, or is that going to be kind of like a semi-autonomous region as it has been for many years? And will it continue to be autonomous, or will it even declare independence at some point? You never really know. Um, there's just so many sides to the conflict that, previously what was the conflict at the moment, I guess we can say there's some sort of stability, sort of. But anyways, I'm gonna get to the second quote, which is the last one. I'm gonna quote directly. Um, The quote is on page 36 and 37. The near universal view is that the U.S., which until 2004 turned over terrorism suspects to Syria for brutal treatment, objects less to the regime's oppression than to its alliances with Russia and Iran. If the U.S. and Israel are contemplating an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, it would make sense to sever the link between Syria and Hezbollah in Lebanon to limit Hezbollah's ability to respond with rockets against Israel. Some Syrians fear that the revolution has become a tool of the US, Saudi Arabia, and Israel to defeat Iran. Um, this obviously is related to the recent video I had about the Israel-Iran war, the 12-day war, which will restart sooner rather than later, I think, which I also covered on this channel. Um, it's very interesting to view it from this perspective. So basically, this is again following the realist interpretation of foreign relations and politics. Um, it's not for upholding democracy. It's not for human rights. It's not for something righteous and moral and good that any of the belligerents in the conflict are doing what they're doing. They're just doing it in self-interested terms. They want to do what is in their interests and what they think is best for their group. Um, so whether the conspiracists at the end of that quote suggesting that destroying Syria is just a means to the ends of the US, Saudi, and Israel to defeat Iran is true or not, it may or may not be true. The order of events and the timeline of developments in recent months suggests that is at the very least a plausible working theory that this is what was going on the whole time, and this is why um, you know, the main goal was Iran. The main target was Iran, in other words. You see this with Jolani becoming the new president or leader of Syria. Jolani was basically the leader of a Al Qaeda offshoot. Like he wasn't some sort of, freedom fighter. He's a fundamentalist Islamist ideology person and group is who he led, and now they have most of the former land of Syria as theirs. With the, I guess, exception of Rojava and then the Golan Heights and some portions which Israel has made incursions into. Um, so that's another interesting topic that can, be a subject of an hour-long talk. But uh, ultimately, maybe the goal was to cripple Iran and damage and give a real swift blow to Iran. As of yet, that has not materialized. Uh, but this idea that uh, they wanted to attack the nuclear facility, so they had to get the smaller pawns in out of the way first. I think is very plausible. Anyways, next point is ultimately, I would very much suggest reading this book if you want to learn more about Syria, um, and what happened, you know, with the swift uh, demise of Assad's regime, in 2024. Uh, but if your main focus is to learn about, for example, the Kurds in general and Rojava in particular, and I think that's one of the areas which this book falls a bit short on, uh, which is not a critique necessarily of the book, but it's just not its lens of focus, and it's not what it's mainly about. The Kurds are a player in the developments, but they're not the only ones. So it's not a book about the Kurds, in other words, it's about Syria. Uh, it is also not specifically geared towards accounting for Assad's government's sudden collapse, other than suggesting that this war may not be over, but may just be starting anew. So the civil war might have been, there might be just a pause in the hostilities, and it might, develop into something different with different sides and different players involved, rather than being a, end to the hostilities in the country. So, that's why he titles it Civil War to Holy War. Maybe the next side of this is a holy war rather than, a secular government fighting against Islamist forces and, different sides, the Kurds as well. All right, well, that's the review. Definitely recommend it if you're interested in Syria and, what is to come in Syria. This will give you a good baseline, broad but also in some instances deep understanding of some of the aspects of it that need to be highlighted. But obviously, it's a 250-page book. Um, it can't be super comprehensive and touch on everything and go deep enough on everything to give you a broad and uh, very complete understanding of everything. But that's not what it's for. It's a relatively short, quick read, and it's very readable as well. So I recommend it. Um, I would, yeah. If you like the video, we'll make more videos like this, hopefully more consistently and on a consistent schedule. But um, like, comment, subscribe, share the video, comment anything you think about this topic or any related topics we've talked about in recent videos. I will respond to your comments, and I'm eager to hear what you guys have to say. All right, thank you guys. See you in the next one.